Empowering women with high testosterone for track races, what medical and ethical implications does this hold for the future of female participants of different sex developments? On this week's episode, we're lucky enough to sit down again with one of our favorite guests, PhD student Anna Posbergh. And this episode is sponsored by Torque Strength and Conditioning. It's a great place to work out, and we hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit again for the listeners who listened to you last time? We're lucky enough to have you on talk about testosterone issues within the Olympics and women's sports. And we're lucky enough to have you back again to go through a whole facet of issues, whatever you bring up or we come up with. And so Anna Posbergh, if you want to kind of tell us about your background again, that'd be awesome.
For sure. Thank you again for having me on again. It's really awesome to be back here in warmer weather this time. So my name is Anna. I'm a PhD student at the University of Maryland. I did my undergraduate at the University of Minnesota. I graduated in 2016, and I studied English, math, and kinesiology there. From there, I went and did my master's at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and I studied English and cultural theory. I finished my master's in a year there, which was crazy, and I would never recommend doing that to someone, take the full 2 years. But after I did that, I went down to Maryland, which is where I am now, and I study kinesiology. I'm a PhD in kinesiology, and my research is predominantly located in international sporting policy, particularly around testosterone regulation, which has become a really hot issue, especially in the past 2 months, starting on May 1st. Even the New York Times released an article about caster semenya and the ruling with testosterone regulation actually being legal now. It is valid, and that went into effect May 9th. So testosterone levels in female athletes is now regulated in track and field, even though the policy was ruled discriminatory. If you have a certain level of testosterone, you either compete as a male, you take hormone suppressants, you change your event, or you quit sport entirely.
That was the ruling.
That was the ruling.
That's still so fucked up, man.
Do you want to break that down again a little bit slower? What was the ruling again?
Yeah, so last we talked when I was here in March, there was an ethical court, or there was a court ruling out on whether or not this new policy that went into effect that regulated the level of testosterone in a female track athlete who competed in the 400 meter up to the mile, any distance in between, if her testosterone level was above a certain amount, she would have to alter that because she was considered a biological male, essentially, and that she had an unfair advantage compared to other female athletes. And so last we talked, it was still out. I was cautiously optimistic that it would not be ruled in the favor of upholding that policy, but on May 1st, 2019, in the actual policy, it literally actually says, we recognize that this is a discriminatory policy, but sometimes discrimination is necessary to protect discrimination.
Oh my goodness.
Verbatim is actually what it's written on page 6, I believe. And so it went into effect May 9th. And so female athletes, there was a caveat that they added in that it's women with XY chromosomes that have above a certain level of testosterone. And that, there was this Let's Run article that went out about talking about how this policy is actually fair because the caveat is it's women with XY chromosomes. The issue that I have and other experts who are way, way smarter than me have with that caveat is XY chromosomes are not indicative of performance. If you have XY chromosomes or XX chromosomes, that doesn't correlate to performance. It's literally your chromosome just determines what kind of external genitalia you develop, what kind of hormones are eventually secreted, but it has nothing really to do with performance. And so if we're talking in sport, performance is the ultimate goal at the end of the day. So why should we care if someone has a penis or a vagina at the end of the day? Like, I feel like, honestly, anatomically, no offense, men, but a penis kind of slows you down. But either way...
I'd agree.
But either way, that caveat in this Let's Run article, they said this is justified because people with XY chromosomes are obviously male. Actually, in testosterone, in sex testing ruling, they used to use chromosomes back in the 1960s, but there are too many loopholes in that, which make that they moved past chromosome testing like 2 years after implementing it because they were like, this is shit, this doesn't work, this isn't what we're getting at, we're moving on past it. So even if they add this caveat in, I don't think it makes a difference.
So what now? Like, if you're a guy who's frail and weak and have low testosterone, what, are you going to compete against the women?
Oh no, they don't test men.
Well, what the fuck?
It doesn't matter. If you are a man with low testosterone, you know what? Good luck. But it actually shows that sometimes men with lower testosterone do win still. Like, I think in the results that in the one study that they're basing this policy off of, in a couple events they found men who had the lowest testosterone and women who had the lowest testosterone actually won their events by a good amount.
Well, I would argue, like, I don't know if this is the case, but women, like, you can train harder
Yeah.
longer, more volume. Like, you guys are like cockroaches. You don't die. Like, we can push you to the brink. We're like a bigger male, like Mad Dog or myself. We're like a pane of glass on a ledge.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we can have a good day, and the next day I'll tear a hamstring.
Ask my boyfriend. Women never go away, and they never forget either.
Yeah. So like, I just don't understand how that's...
Well, let me ask you a few questions here too. So, are they able to appeal? Are certain athletes able to appeal this at all, or is it going to be case by case studies, or as a whole overall case is it going to be appealed? Do you know?
Right, that's a really good question. So actually, Caster Semenya, this decision was appealed by 2 different cases. So the first was Athletic South Africa, and so they filed an appeal on that discriminatory clause. They're saying, hold on, like, you are saying this is discriminatory. How can you actually uphold this? And then the other appeal came from Caster Semenya, who a lot of people believe this policy actually targeted. And because she's appealed it, the ethics court currently has suspended that ruling and that testosterone regulation on her. So she is able to compete currently without changing her hormone levels. But the issue with that is right now, so the Diamond League is going on right now, and that's this amazing circuit over in Western Europe, where it's these big meets, it's these qualifying, you can qualify for the Olympics in this, and it's amazing competition. But my understanding is you have to be invited to those meets. And so just because she is able to compete in those events, it doesn't mean that she's actually getting invited to be able to qualify for the Olympics. And also her appeal, I think, they have to make a decision. She's no longer, what am I trying to say? This appeal expires in September, so she can really only compete until September.
So it's a limited time.
It is.
Okay, so then the other question on top of that is, with the targeted, the way they're trying to rule this against the XY chromosome, you were saying, and obviously the testosterone levels, but are they able to somewhat sufficiently tell whether or not it's a natural testosterone or it's performance-enhanced testosterone?
Yes, so science is sophisticated enough where they can, I don't know the nuances behind it, and I've not read enough about it to, I think, make a definitive statement on it, but they are able to tell if it's naturally producing or if it's taken just because of usually the corresponding internal genitalia that are there and various parts within your inside body. They're able to tell if it's doping or if it's actually your body producing it. And also then the effects that it has on your body are different as well, and how you look and how rapidly that does or doesn't change too. Yeah.
And the other big argument that you kind of brought up that goes back, well, really that I can recall to like the Barry Bonds issue is performance-based off of testosterone or whatever use you want to call it, PED use, because that hand-eye coordination you're not going to get stronger with because of PED use. It's always going to be there, so maybe that's the argument in saying it doesn't perform or doesn't increase performance. But some would argue, when you see the home run numbers go up or whatever athlete it was, I think the recovery is the key there, right?
For sure.
Because you're able to recover way better than an athlete that's not using, right?
Sure.
So if it's not performance based, would their threat be the recovery part of it? What do you think, besides just the testosterone level, what's the threat that they're fearing right now with the ruling?
Right. I think that's a really interesting point you bring up about the recovery rate. And I've not read anything about that, but that is something interesting that perhaps is something that I should look into, because that is a really good point. Like, that recovery rate is a little bit quicker. Interestingly, in the study that they're using for this policy, they found that, so right now, the 400 meter up to the mile is what's regulated. If you run in the 3K or if you're a javelin thrower, your testosterone levels can be off the charts, but that doesn't actually matter. It's just the 400 to the mile.
Okay.
Yep, just those events. In this study, the only events that they found the female athletes with higher testosterone correlating to higher performance, like having a statistical difference, was in the 400, the pole vault, the javelin, the shot, and then I think the 800. So it was actually mostly hand-eye coordination sport. Being a pole vaulter, I mean, me weighing 1,000,000 pounds, like, my hand-eye coordination is really important. It's a very technical event, as with the javelin. And so in that actual study, in the conclusion, they say perhaps we see the effects of testosterone on hand-eye coordination and in kind of spatial awareness sports, more so than running events, which raises the question then, why are you regulating events that did not show a statistical difference in performance?
Yeah, that makes no sense. Like, it's not against shot putters as well, right?
Oh, no.
Which that would be prominent. Like,
right.
That just makes sense. If, get stronger to throw a object as far as you can.
Right.
Well, guess what? Let's go on the gas.
Yeah.
But someone who needs Like javelin, I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because in the history, when you look at the history of sex testing, so sex testing started in 1960 officially is when they implemented it, and it came out of a fear that men were competing as women, which is a substantial fear back in the day of female sport, because if you let a man compete in women's sport, he's going to dominate because women are not biologically as excellent as
was
men.
This fear just for Olympics only?
It was at the Olympics only, but then it expanded also to because they saw the International Track Federation, they saw what the Olympics were doing, and so they also then implemented it because they saw this issue predominantly in track, because it happened in the 1936 Olympics. A male high jumper competed as a female high jumper because Hitler told him to, which is a whole other issue that we don't have to go into. But that started this fear of men competing as women.
Yeah.
And that.
So Hitler's now still causing problems, is what you're saying.
What else is new? But yeah, so that's how that started, and that's where that fear comes from, is that men will compete as women. I don't remember the original question, but I remember that this was relevant.
Yeah, no, that was very relevant. It just makes me also, I guess, think about what sports or Olympic, what could they get away with, I guess, because back in the 60s especially, you weren't pretty much nothing as an athlete.
Right.
Or an Olympic lifter. Or
for
whatever.
sure, an Olympic lifter,
That's how Steve, you're explaining that. There's only so many...
Well, I know back in the day for Olympic lifting, they would just get naked.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
Yeah, like that was a
if you're a swimmer, I mean, obviously you could put on a one piece versus just if you're a guy, you know, trying to compete as a woman. But what event in Olympics or what sport could you actually try to get away with trying to be the other sex, right?
For sure.
Right.
It's got to be very, and even at that point, I feel like you got to be quite the feminine build to kind of say you're a female
for
sure.
too.
Right. So when they did an autopsy on the high jumper, the male high jumper who competed as a woman, they found that
It's almost embarrassing.
Yeah, he was intersex actually, and so he had ambiguous genitalia, which made him able to kind of hide that and compress everything to do so. I do remember my point now. So in the 1960 Olympics, the kind of final straw for sex testing was when the Press sisters from the Soviet Union competed, and they were gold medalists in the hurdles and the shot put, I want to say.
Okay.
But they were white women, but they were built, they were jacked, and people called them the Press brothers, even though they competed as women. That also perpetuated this idea that women are supposed to look a certain way, men are supposed to look a certain way, and if you see a woman who doesn't quite look like a woman, there's got to be something else going on. And so that was kind of the final straw and what prompted testing then.
Well, look at that too, because 56 years later now, the Russians were all banned from the Olympics because of you. So it's been going on for that long, and finally they
when did steroids really, they came out with it in what, the 50s?
As far as what?
I've read stuff about it, but don't quote me on the time.
Yeah, I remember I read one article. So I'm in the middle of comprehensive exam studying, so I read about 6 to 8 hours a day, and I think I remember an article that I read which talked about doping, and I think they officially started regulating it in the 80s?
Yeah, so back in Bob... back in Bob's day, so before that it was fair game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, but the point was, I think, because back in the 50s, the U.S., at least Olympic weightlifting, we used to kick ass. But then all of a sudden, basically, the Cold War started this... Basically, that's where we get a lot of our, literature for strength and conditioning is thank you to the Cold War and all the testing they did with the Soviet Union. But they kind of brought steroids to light, and, here we are now.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where it started. It didn't start in bodybuilding.
Exactly, yeah.
It started in Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, too, the different trajectories that have taken with doping versus sex testing, because doping, I think it's pretty uncontested. If you take a steroid, you are cheating. That's not fair. But the direction that sex testing has taken, if you have the same hormone that you naturally produce, it's become so contested, which is really interesting to kind of see, because it used to be the same organization that regulated both, actually. But they found that doping was a bigger thing, like there was no contestation with it, so they actually developed their own kind of anti-doping agency, and sex testing has hit a lot of snags, but a lot of different organizations have tried to take it on, but there's always been resistance to it, and I think it's because it's not the same as doping, and people who try to equate the two, they're not the same at the end of the day. You're not doing any, if I was born the way I am,
it's discrimination.
I'm sorry.
It
makes I'm so caught off guard that
which is crazy.
We're so worried about making everything level, but we also need to take things where we naturally are.
Right, exactly. Sport is not a fair playing field at the end of the day.
No, some people genetically are different or better at different things. There are people that are a hell of a lot smarter than any of us. You're way smarter than us. But right?
It doesn't feel like it at all.
But that's my point though. everyone's in their wheelhouse, stay in your lane. All of a sudden, you're going to take that away from someone that they're naturally gifted at.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of that comes from jealousy too. When you see a natural athlete that is testosterone high, just naturally, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have to work as hard as the other person, or they're dying 3 hours, 7 days a week.
Right.
There's got to be something they're doing that I.
But at the same time, you see guys like that who are gifted and then they don't do shit with it because they're lazy.
Yeah.
Well,
But at the same time, you get people like this who are both.
Yes.
They work
yes.
hard and they have that gift. That's very discouraging.
That jealousy kind of maybe started some of this when they're seeing these twins. Mm-hmm. So my question real quick to you, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you do have the double genitalia in today's world,
mm-hmm.
what are you able to identify as either, or are you just kicked out completely?
Wait, how do you know?
Yeah,
like
so
well, it's like that guy didn't obviously know, right?
Right, well...
Wait, you have to know.
Yeah.
Or did he actually have both? Like, both?
Well, so it's really interesting. This has been my little area for the past 3 months, is reading about how we determine sex when children are born.
That's a fun 6 to 8 hours.
Oh man, it's something. So when a child is born, there are two tests that are primarily done. They look at the chromosomes and they look at what a child does or doesn't have. And usually a child will, the chromosomes and the genitalia will line up. So if an infant is born, XY chromosomes has a little neophallic penis, then it's a male. Like, you have these two things lining up. But sometimes you get things that don't line up. So you'll have XX chromosomes, but something that could be eventually a penis. And so in those cases, a lot of times what they do is it's hard because how do you tell the parent, like, hey, you have a healthy child, but we don't know if you need the blue or the pink.
Yeah.
So actually they do perform genital surgery on infants. They try to do it as soon as possible, and that either involves constructing a vagina and removing a penis, or that's usually what they do because it's easier to dig a hole than it is to build a pole.
Oh my God.
The phrase that doctors
well said.
Oh my God.
Is the phrase that doctors have verbatim used, and so they perform those surgeries, or they sew up something that looks like a vagina and see if a penis forms.
Wow.
And a lot of times those surgeries can cause issues, and they need, when the child hits puberty again, they do further tests and have to usually do follow-up surgeries as well.
Well, that's probably too. You probably see this happen to people who should be. Let's say they made you a female, and now you want to be a guy. So that's where I'm sure some of those cases are transsexual, right?
Yeah, so that happens very frequently, actually, because a lot of times it's a guessing game at the end of the day. Like, we think that this is what is dominantly have male characteristics, so we think we're going to be male. There have been a lot of cases where the child grows up and is like, hey, this isn't what I am driving with.
Do you know if, you may not, but do you know, you said it's the doctor's decision because of, the better results they're seeking. Do the parents ever get away on this, say, no, I want my child to be a boy?
Yes, absolutely. So there is definitely, you need parental consent, obviously, before you do these surgeries. In today's era, this is not a thing that was always the case, actually. Sometimes doctors would just do the surgeries. But in today's society, obviously you need parental consent. But a lot of times, if you have two parents, that one just gave birth and one is there supporting, and you find out that your child you don't know what sex they are, you're exhausted, and your doctor's saying, hey, we've seen this before, this is what we should do, this is what's going to go on, you're apt to believe the doctor because we have this value in the medicinal community that they're going to do what's best and take care of us. And they don't do their research necessarily. Some parents don't do their research necessarily, which isn't a hit on them at all. Like, you just gave birth to a thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't know about this till now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is, obviously, you do need parental consent. And there are stories of parents who say, hey, we're going to hold off on surgery because actually you don't need to perform those surgeries. Most of the time they're not life-threatening. And you can have the surgeries later on. You can have them at any stage in life. Yeah. But doctors believe that it comes from a theory, this social gender theory, where if you line up a child's genitalia to what sex you want them to be and raise them as such, they're more apt to follow through with that gender then, is the belief that child rearing and how you raise the child, if their genitals line up with what you believe, that's what they'll identify as. And so they want to do this surgery ASAP. Also because then parents can announce, like, hey, we have a boy, and not have any issues, or hey, we have a girl, and not have any issues with that.
I get that, but at the same time, now, chemically, everything, who you are doesn't line up.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a lot of issues within that. So parents do have a say, but a lot of times it's hard to contradict a doctor who has this huge authority figure and has gone to all this schooling and saying, hey, this is what I recommend you doing.
Do you know, I'm going to give the stats obviously later, but do you have any idea, top of your head at all, what the percentage of of babies born are in the situation. And on top of that, furthermore, how many of these individuals end up in a sport where they have to choose the sex?
Sure.
It's gotta be low, I imagine, but maybe I'm wrong.
The children who have the ambiguous genitalia, who aren't clearly male or clearly female, we call those intersex children, and the rate is actually believed to be the same as children with autism. Actually.
Wow, okay.
So it's pretty high.
Yeah. So it's actually really hard to diagnose it though, because there are 5 characteristics that go into determining sex. You have external genitalia, internal genitalia, gonads, hormones, and then secondary sex characteristics, which emerge at puberty. When you're born, you only look at your chromosomes and your external genitalia, and you're not forgetting, but it's unnecessary. You don't usually need to test for the other 3. And so there are 3 variables out there that could go either way. And that's why usually intersex only comes up when a child goes through puberty and has a lot of pain, like if they are raised as a girl, they don't get their period, or if they're a girl and all of a sudden their voice gets lower and they grow facial hair. Those secondary sex characteristics are usually pretty indicative of an intersex trait. Or if someone is trying to conceive and have a baby and they're unable to, that's also when you can find intersex traits.
So you mentioned you were just back at the University of Maryland, was it?
Yes.
Lecturing for about 5 days straight.
I was.
Were you lecturing on this topic alone? And if so, and if not, let me know, but what are your thoughts moving forward that you think would be a clear, conscious decision for them to make moving forward in this case?
Right. So I was back in Maryland. They kindly offered me a guest lecture spot that also helped pay for my rent, which was really fun. They were long lectures.
Gotta take that.
Hell yeah.
Major key. Living in the DC area is not cheap. But so I was I did lecture a little bit on my research, but mainly they wanted me to do just basic gender theory and basic race theory as our critical race theory. And so just kind of introducing the constructions of sex, gender, race, how we kind of make these categories, what's the history behind it, and then also the contextualization of it in an American context. So race relations through slavery to contemporary time, through like Kaepernick and all those activism moments, and then also with sex and gender, I focused a lot on my research because I was obviously more comfortable with it than talking about something that I have no idea about. Yeah. And what was the second part of your question?
I was asking as far as, now you just spoke what you lectured on, and then the next part, I think my question was just kind of getting to what would you like to see done as a clear, conscious decision by the courts moving forward for these athletes who are in that position? Yeah,
I think it is worth mentioning that all the athletes affected so far are all athletes of color.
Oh, wow.
There have not been any white athletes come forward that have said they've been affected by it, so it's athletes predominantly in India, South Africa, Nigeria, usually poorer areas as well. And so it's hard to ignore the race and socioeconomics part of it as well.
Now, dumb question for you in that regard. Does that have something to do with could it be malnutrition? Is it the water? Is it something that all different factors contribute to?
Yeah, I don't think that's a dumb question at all. It could be, and it's also, if you look at what am I trying to say? So there's this preconception that black athletes typically are stronger, are faster, and they're more adapted for sport. And so there have been a lot of regulations out there to try to limit the black athlete in terms of their athletic prowess, because there's this belief in the biological difference between black athletes and white athletes. To really simplify the issue, looking in 2 categories. And so there's a lot of beliefs, if you look at kind of critical race scholars, that look at this policy as a way to regulate black athletes and maintain the white athletes as a more superior athlete, and kind of because black athletes, they look like black men, and you can't have black men running around in women's races because they're going to dominate because they're biologically superior, and these black women look like black men. And so, and it's in this court ruling, it was three white court arbitrators who are all from the global north. So we call the global north kind of like the Western European, North American, dominantly white countries. And so there wasn't anyone representing these countries that have been disproportionately affected by this policy. And it's really hard not to ignore who's been affected by it, how they look, and what the color of their skin is also, and the kind of conditions, like you pointed out, that they come from as well.
That's huge. You think that, what level was that in the courts? Can it continue to go higher in the spring?
This is the highest level.
This is the highest level already.
Yep. This is coming down from the highest level.
That way. Okay, that's really interesting. You think it would have been more of a decision, a conscious decision to be aware of that cultural issues.
Yeah.
So wrapping this all up, I guess, this topic at least, we can go back to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
We'll change a little bit here, direction. So right now, if I believe right, Olympic athletes cannot be paid, right?
I think they can get sponsorships.
They can get sponsorships.
And they also win when they...
They get like stipends and stuff like
they
that.
Do.
Yeah, depending on how they perform. Depends on the country, I believe.
Yeah.
Right, and also I think the event too, if they win, they get a certain like prize money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, we were talking a little bit earlier before the week. We were just talking about, which I enjoy baseball, and some people do not. But we were talking about just the parameters of these Olympic athletes go and they train for the whole 4 years, 8 years in some cases to be in the Olympics, and now they get a stipend, but it's nowhere near some of the pro athletes what they're making. So, what are your kind of just personal thoughts on that as far as what any human should be making and just your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember this conversation. Well, NFL, MLB, and NHL players make too much at the end of the day. They're athletes. Being an athlete, and we're all athletes here, there's a lot that sport can bring, and I think sport is awesome, but at the end of the day, it's entertainment. You're not saving lives. You're not making society necessarily a better place. You don't need to be making more than a teacher, more than a doctor, more than a general physician. And so I do think there's too much money in certain sports. Like if you look at the women's national team that just won, their typical annual, the amount that they make typically in a year doesn't break $50,000. So that's women's soccer that has now won 4 World Cups. But if you look at Major League Baseball, you're getting contracts for like $300 million, where like you can still get that money even if you're injured.
Those cable contracts, they just keep increasing.
Oh, for sure. Well, then you think about,
it's insane.
I saw that statistic where any team in March Madness for college, like if you broke down the same percentage what you get paid in the NBA, every player, even if they rode the bench, I think just for the month of March was it like 1.2 million?
Oh my gosh.
Something like that.
And think about how many,
and those kids don't get paid shit.
All their jerseys being sold.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, they get a free education. Yeah. Let's just back up there for one.
If they're there for a year.
Come on, you're at a state school. Is it really all that much money? And then at the same time, you're gonna be like the rest of us. You got to pay it back.
Oh yeah.
But after you sign that contract for millions, go ahead, pay it back.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. So I really do think there's too much money in sports, but I also think that there's a cap to it, and we talked about this, in that I do think the NFL has an expiration date, and I know it's a really controversial thing to say, and my boyfriend and I go back and forth about it all the time. I'm sorry, Dalen, for saying this now, but the NFL has an expiration date, and I think it's going to be gone in 10 years, and I think for sure in 50 years.
Well, the sport's getting soft.
Well, I think that maybe, but I also think it's because parents are so apprehensive to letting their kids play. Even NFL players are apprehensive to letting their children play with CTE, with everything, and so.
And that's the main issue, right? The CTE
right,
issues.
yeah.
The CTE issues.
And then the money too. I think like there is only so much money that can go into this. Like, where is this money coming from?
Well,
that's about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's scary too. You look at some of the side effects.
Yeah.
And I've talked to other guys who I played with, like me and Mad Dog, and I'm like, oh hey, I just checked off like half that list.
Right.
I'm 30.
Now, I will say, I understand where you're coming from, what you're saying, but I disagree. I think it'll still be around just because the money. The money aspect. The NFL is not going to go to business. They already tried to cover it up one time. They're not going to be afraid to do it a few more times for the brain injury stuff. And also, and I could be way off on this, I probably have some damage myself, but I remember hearing Bud Grant one time talk about how, when he was questioned on this, and he just said that he thought some individuals were predisposed to having those type of injuries in CTE versus other people, just by our genetics and all that basis. And whether you're a lineman or linebacker, repetitive hits, some people have really major issues down the road, and others are just fine. And that made me think maybe he's onto something. Who knows? Maybe the research will eventually show that. And all these NFL players who are giving their brains to science when they retire, when they pass away, is actually pretty noble, right? Or even the saddest thing are when the guys who take their own lives and shoot themselves in the heart, so that they can do the brain research on them. It's just even more
scary,
sad.
Man.
I think the money now, the over televising of football now on Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday might kill it alone because it's not that primary sport as it used to be. But I still think the money in the raw the raw battle that people want to see. We're such an archaic society no matter what happens. I think, my personal belief, and I hope you're probably going to be right, who knows, but I think it's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I think... Do you have any thoughts?
Let's hear it.
No. I'm a huge football guy, but I have my problems with it. Because to me, I just hate the fact that now, because they play football and they have a limelight on them, they think they can also have a voice.
Sure.
That actually bugs me.
Yeah.
Can you like in what regard?
I don't know, like, sitting down in a national anthem, all that other stuff. I don't know. That bugs me. I'm like, you know what? If you're going to be a team player, be a team player. If you're going to do those things, do it outside of the team because you represent someone else, just not yourself.
Okay.
That's the way I stand.
That's a lot of social issues, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not against what some of those guys are standing for. That's awesome. But at the same time, you're there to play football, not... I don't want to hear your personal beliefs, no offense.
I think that's and like I've heard those arguments for sure, and like I think it's interesting, not interesting, but when we think about talking like splitting sport and politics, like keep your politics out of sport, like this is sport, this is football time, why are politics here? At the end of the day, though, sport has always been political. When we look at why sport emerges, when we look at the money in there's always politics within that, which is really hard. And also, I think it's when you're an athlete, when you're an NFL athlete, when you're an MLB athlete, when you're on the women's national soccer team and you're the most watched game ever and your jersey sells the most ever, you have such a good platform to raise awareness to these issues also. And so I see both arguments because we're there to watch the game, we're there to be a team. But it's also, I think, you have that platform to speak up and you have a voice that other people don't. Like your podcast is awesome and I'm trying to like...
What was that?
Say it again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I'm not Megan Rapinoe. I'm not Colin Kaepernick. What I say at the end of the day will...
But it matters.
But that's the thing. You're doing it on a platform. That's what it's for.
Right.
That's my... Like, if they want to speak out and go on radio, talk show stuff, I think that's the place to do it, for sure, rather than dishonoring others.
But I think
that's my problem with it.
I think the beauty in that, too, is whatever, if it's a team, if it's your own family, if it's your group of friends... It's all, I guess, built around the culture that you decide to build. Whether you're going to be very outlandish, you're going to be very tight-knit and keep it together. It is interesting to watch each individual NFL team, whether they stand or not, or you watch how which offensive line talks to the media, which one doesn't. Yep. It's just interesting to see the different dynamics between, the teams and which ones. Then you base off their success. Now, Bill Belichick doesn't let his team ever talk to anybody, and look what they've done.
No, for sure. The coaches set the tone, for sure.
And there's other teams where they are more vocal and out there, and then they do well, too. So it's a unique thing. They always talk about chemistry doesn't matter. If you just have the talent, that's all that matters. You can argue that, saying chemistry's everything with dog shit players, and you can accomplish something. Mm-hmm. So you can go back and forth.
Well, that's what I love about sports is like, I hope it doesn't go away no matter what the sport. Like, I don't like baseball. I hate soccer. I just say soccer because I coach soccer players. They always have imbalances. Same thing with basketball players. But what does sport do for people?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to make someone either, they're going to have fucking grit. They're going to work harder. They're going to know how to be organized. They're going to be better. They're work with others better. Like, anytime I have a good athlete who comes in or a coworker or a friend, they're usually an ex-athlete of some form. Not saying that's the only way to go, but I think it does teach us something great. For sure. But at the same time, not everyone, but all of a sudden I see some that it does get lost at the professional level, for sure. Like I hate like players who make it all about them rather than about the team.
Antonio Brown?
What's that?
Antonio Brown? Anyone?
He used to be fantasy player for me for a few years.
Or obviously Aaron Rodgers, because I hate the Packers.
Well, it becomes a business too, right?
It does. It's about money.
The sport becomes different when all of a sudden a team cuts you when you've been so loyal to them. Like, well, why am I being loyal to them if they're going to cut my ass?
For sure.
So it does go back and forth.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers I used to, kind of admire him from afar, just thinking he was being next Favre, and then he's become just more weak as it goes on. It's kind of funny to kind of guess what week he's going to get injured in now.
Yeah.
But we have to get Anna back out here.
No, I appreciate listening to this. My natural habitat is just to recede back and listen, and so it's good for me to be on here to actually start vocalizing things. So thank you for letting me just go back to my normal self. I think it's really interesting to talk about an athlete and what you said something, Tony, that sparked this idea that we talk about a lot in PhD school about the commodification of the athlete. And so we have an athlete, they have these talents that we want, and so we commodify it. But in doing so, we take away their autonomy, we take away their agency, we take away their voice, because we are commodifying them, we're putting a price tag on them, we're reducing them to a number. And when you go through the NFL, if you're not good for our team anymore, you're gone as soon as possible.
And you see that happen a lot.
Right, and I think the issue with what they call now athlete activism, that's a phrase that just came out within the past couple of years. I think Kaepernick really started the whole thing. Athlete activism.
And because of that, he's been boycotted, right? Or some say he has.
Yes.
So you're exactly right.
I would agree. I mean, come on, he was talented.
He's better than a lot of guys who were signed as backups this year.
Right, for sure. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think with the commodified athlete, when you really come down to it, the perfect commodified athlete is an athlete that performs well, doesn't get injured, obviously, but also doesn't say anything and just does their job and moves along. And I think the thing with athlete activism is now people are resisting against that. They're speaking out. They're using this platform to not just sell their talents, but they're using it to create greater good. They're using sport for the purpose that I think it was created for, to make better people, to bring us all together in a way moving forward. And I think that's why I really do support Megan Rapinoe sitting down or kneeling in solidarity with Kaepernick back in 2016. I really support Megan Rapinoe. Also, I love her. She's one of my favorite athletes, but also her dyeing her hair. I support Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the anthem as well, because they're pushing back against us, looking at them just as their talents, just as a number. They're trying to do something with the talents that they were given more than just on the field, I think.
I haven't heard it that way, but I like it.
Thank
you. No, I understand both ways. I'm always left and far, or a little bit center. So I'm never going to argue about something because I understand both. I totally understand both sides.
Both valid points, and the opposite of that would be that the teams that are trying to keep everyone quiet, they don't want distractions. They want to focus on the task at hand. They don't want the side project to be all about. So it's all what the mindset is, and whether or not, like you said, you want to accommodate to that and be a yes man, or you want to be an individual in order to live your life.
Which I could totally understand, because I am a yes man. I don't like telling me what the fuck to do. But at the same time, if you use that platform like you said, then hopefully they capitalize on it and start it, I don't know, a foundation or something, right? And
I think, it also comes down to an ethical question. At what point do you draw the line? At what point are you just drawing attention?
Yeah.
And at what point are you actually trying to better your team, your society, and you? Where do you draw that line? And I think that's another really interesting question, because you see both sides. It becomes a political question at the end of the day. Are you just trying to bring attention to yourself, as some people say about Kaepernick? Are you just trying to increase your sales? Are you just what are you trying to do? Or are you actually
not at the end of his career?
Right?
But you
exactly.
question on because of all those, what are the what are the reasons why?
Yeah, and so I think it becomes a better question to ask is where do we draw the line? What is something that we can accommodate for? I like the phrase that you use with that, Tony, so I'm going to stick with it. What can you accommodate for, but at what point are you actually being a detriment to the team and to sport bringing everyone together?
Yeah, that's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing, at least for me, when you think about in individual sports, where I think it's a lot easier to be flamboyant in your passions.
Yeah.
But when you're in a team sport, and we'll just use football for a reason because we've been on that.
Yeah.
And you go into that locker room, not even locker room, you go into your position-specific meetings, and you had to face all the other D-O linemen looking at you.
Well, think about it. What if you did that, and I had a brother who died in Iraq? You're gonna cause friction.
That's
That's what I'm That's kind of my point.
And there's gonna be 3 other 4 other 5 or 6 other people in there that
agree
you
or
really
disagree.
want to. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, is they're gonna look at it as, again, like Anna just had really pointed out greatly, is it all for yourself, or are you trying to do it for other people, or are you trying to just be better than us? You gotta bring something about yourself, or is it truly because you're passionate about it because it affected you?
Yeah.
And those are something that, no matter how we debate this, it all goes back to what you truly want to support.
Yeah.
It's tough, but it's probably good that it's out there, so we have to make a decision. Because if we were all accommodating, it'd be a boring life, right?
Right. And I think also this is a good, we do have issues. Obviously, being a United States citizen, living in the U.S. is an amazing thing, and it's a huge privilege, but I think we do obviously have issues that are still underlying, and I think that having to talk about these issues and making a decision forces us to talk about the problems that we have in sport, outside of sport, and kind of confront those face on, and what side are we going to be on? What are we going to do to not replicate the past, what are we going to do to continue moving forward? So not only does it like force us to make a decision, it forces us to talk about issues that are really hard to talk about, like bringing up that race issue with testosterone. Like that's an uncomfortable thing to bring up.
Yeah, that's a big bomb. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It is relevant. Hell yeah, it's relevant.
It's reality. It's reality. That's the thing about that, I think, is someone that does bring it up, because you wouldn't know those issues unless someone wrote the article that tells you about it. All you hear is a court ruling, which is great you brought it up, because it brings a whole nother social issue up.
Most topics like this, you never have both sides of the story. You don't have the full story.
Right.
You have the pieces that people want you to know to make the decision that supports them.
Exactly.
Always.
We can get into the issues of the media with that too, but
Oh, you mean now that what's the term? What happened in the early 90s where it's like free market media or whatever? Basically they take stories, put business pieces, and exaggerate things because it's now for money, for ratings. Before, news didn't make
clickbait
money.
stuff, like clickbait kind of thing.
No, God, I watched a documentary about it. It was late 80s, early 90s, but all of a sudden the news could now, basically it was open book on ratings.
Oh wow!
So they made money. So now you start getting stories that are exaggerated, and they do all
in
this
the direction they want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn it! I'll find out what that was on. I think it was on.
Let me know. Yeah.
It's on Netflix. What is it called? The 90s.
Okay.
It's on there because it shows goes year to year about Bill Clinton, and then it shows all this other stuff. It's a great it's about the whole decade.
Yeah.
But definitely watch it. They talk about that. I had no idea. So they started talking about all of a sudden you see the thing at the bottom. It started being flashy and entertaining. Where before it's this is the facts. This is what happened. Bye. So that's why
the scroll line and everything.
All that stuff has totally changed. So it's one of those things where now you don't know what the hell. And not only that, you get these people who are supposed to be experts. You don't know who the hell they are, but they start speaking on one side of the topic. Find another person.
Yeah.
You want to see an argument. Now it's entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you should get Netflix to sponsor your podcast because you literally just plug them.
Are you listening?
Yeah, Netflix.
At Netflix, where are you?
Right? And that's another great point. Maybe that's a whole other topic, because even if you go on websites and they got the banners in specific spots where your eyes are going to trigger on them, versus you got to pay for a different price for that advertising spot. But back to
one other thing. What was this? Someone was telling me there's algorithms that your phone will listen.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was literally talking to someone about selling my Again Faster squat rack.
How much is it?
I already sold it. Oh. Sorry. But I sold it, and then literally that day on my phone, I was on Instagram, and Again Faster ad popped up on my fucking Instagram for a squat rack. I looked at it. I didn't believe that person. I looked at it. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yep. I was texting. So, spoiler, I don't know when this episode's coming out, but my boyfriend and I are getting engaged soon. And so I was texting him about...
Are you proposing?
Honestly.
She's like, I'm sick of fucking waiting. We're doing this.
Thank you. But I was texting him about engagement rings, and what do you know? On my Facebook page, there's an ad for an engagement ring company, and it's just been all over the place.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so weird, and you don't notice it because, unless you actually, you're like, hold on. Why is that there?
I never put that together either, but I'm always working in, owning a gym. I'm always buying equipment or looking at things.
Right.
And I'm always like, why are the ads always this stuff?
Yeah.
And I just assume because I follow a lot of fitness stuff,
Right.
Well, it
but I was wrong.
Reason to, besides following the Iron Huddle, to just delete everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
only the Iron Huddle.
Really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. So to bring it back to sport, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast started, or didn't, maybe not, depending on what Anthony wants to cut. Let's talk about before these athletes even get to that pro level.
Right.
What do you guys, because you see more and more, I guess, kids injuries, or they're just built differently these days because they go to these specific sport camps and specific gym camps. What are your guys' thoughts and opinions as both coaches and leaders in this area?
Unified against sports specialization at an early age.
Let's go. Let's hear. So what's better then? So we all agree that's bad. How do you train to overall have someone be overall balanced?
The opposite of everyone else.
Okay.
It's true though.
Just like I just put a banner up in my gym, weak things break. Right?
Oh,
Louis Simmons.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. So it's true. I'm not saying, let's say you have a 15-year-old kid who comes in, needs to be able to squat what I do, or do a high bar, low bar, whatever. You squat to the depth they can. And they're going to start with a barbell their first day. If they don't have the mechanics or the strength, they're not going to do it. But anyways, I think truly you need balance between all muscle structure and basically build a suit of iron, right? So then all of a sudden they can do movement better. They can do it faster. They can do it with less risk of injury. But you still need those skills for sport, without a doubt. So someone coming in and doing speed drills and everything else that they're going to do in their sport, you can't replicate sport in my eyes most times.
No.
So why should I coach that?
Right. I would also argue that at the younger level, they need to understand why they're doing it, what they're doing, and what is being, to build that kind of bodily awareness.
For sure, yeah.
We were talking about, like, you get these gangly 17-year-olds that you're like,
giraffes.
put your hips back, and they like lean forward.
Well, yeah, when they squat like all on the toes, all quad, and then they're like, my knees hurt. No shit. Well, and it's never happened before.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's see here.
Well, that was actually that was a lot of fun topics too.
Yeah.
That was really good.
That's never done that before. That was really weird.
If you want to sit on this side more in the shade, if that's easier.
I can also move if need be as well.
Let's see what's going on here. I'm hoping it just picks back up and starts recording. Okay, I'm gonna save this.
Perfect.
Okay, hold on, and we'll reintroduce the sports thing.
Dude, you look. I think it's amazing that you got those two coming out, plus Chris.
And then, Kalipa sent his manager to AJ.
Oh,
Games
seriously?
Athlete. Yeah.
Well, he's a huge CrossFitter out in California, right?
Yep.
He won the games like 2010.
Yeah, I think so. It's recording, by the way. Just
Okay.
so you know, but yeah.
So
I'm gonna keep watching this like a hound. If we just have to keep doing this, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, the answer
No
with
worries.
it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, this has never happened.
You have nothing to apologize for.
So where did you leave off? You just want to pick up where you were at? So.
Oh, I had a point that I was going to bring up about,
Do it.
so there was a year or two ago, I was either reading something or I was watching a YouTube video where they had Andre DeGrassi, who is a Canadian sprinter. I think he got second or third to Usain Bolt in the 2016 Olympics. They had him racing against, was it Jesse Owens, I think? No. It might have been the 100-meter world record holder in the 1960s. They had them racing against each other, but they gave the 1960 world record holder the technology that Andre DeGrassi had with the shoes, with the stars, with the blocks, and they actually found that Andre DeGrassi wasn't actually faster than him. With like science, they were able to kind of mimic the race.
Okay.
And they found that even with all the technology, like if the equipment had been the same, the caliber of athlete actually isn't different. Actually, despite all these changes. So the reason why athletes are getting faster, especially in track and field, this argument is because of technological advances, but not because of athlete strength, conditioning, caliber, etc. So why are we changing all these techniques that have clearly been working for years to make money, to add the flashes, the bells and whistles to all of this?
100%. I hear that. I hear Louis Simmons say, if you want to train like a 1970s athlete, you'll be a 1970s athlete. Which there's parts that I understand, but at the same time, you look at. I come back to Olympic weightlifting. The best era in Olympic weightlifting, 70s through the 80s. Those are the strongest people. I mean, obviously there's some help, but we haven't been able to lift weights like they have since, and the sport is still dirty as hell.
Right.
So what are we doing?
Right, exactly. And so sports specialization, you have it, and I think people are like, well, you get exposed to the sport earlier, especially being a pole vaulter. If you pole vault younger, you get exposed to it earlier. But it's not the strength, you're learning the technique. You can learn that just from doing drills. You learn that when you're younger, you do drills. You hold a pole.
Movement
Exactly.
movement over intensity. Like, you look at like the Chinese, they do bodybuilding, they do all this other stuff, like, and they never go to maximum effort.
Nope.
And here in the U.S., hey, we're gonna. In a typical American weightlifting is
That's the guy on the East Coast.
snatch, clean and jerk, pulls, squats. That's it.
Yeah.
God forbid. Oh, you have weak hamstrings? Do pulls.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to
No.
isolate the fucking hamstrings, man. Like, just small things that I think GPP is so underestimated. I think it's something you need to do way more of. Everyone.
And with that, going back to with what we were talking about, the kids and sports specific, getting away from that and actually working on real movements. If there is a farm in your community, go drop your kids off, knock on the door, and ask if they can work there 5 days a week.
Dude,
money, right?
Like,
Yeah.
You're going to be so many different movements with weight, with body.
There's something said to be farm
Yes.
strong. I
You're
grew up
very
working on a farm.
overall. Yeah.
It's something I think every kid should learn how to do, is just some manual labor.
Absolutely.
Like, I have some kids here, they're like, well, I can't come. And I'm like, how old are you? 13. I go, what's the problem? You have a bike, don't you? And he lives a mile away, and he looks at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And his dad starts laughing at him because I think he's been telling him the same thing. And I'm like, dude, get on your fucking bike and ride here.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, 8 o'clock in the morning, I ate my cereal. I'm on my damn BMX bike.
Well, and with that, I think the part, even, the movements you're going to do and the strength and whatnot you're going to learn from do it at the farm. You learn that you're going to become prideful in what your task is that day too.
Right.
So it's not just going in and learning to do whatever the lift is, but you're learning and taking pride in that you're gonna pick up all those rocks, you're gonna bale that hay, you're gonna feed all those goats, whatever it is. You take pride in doing that, which carries over to so many other things that hopefully become half of what Anna is in her life today. So like that just carries over, right? At least my perspective from it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the word I was trying to think of while you both were talking, I receded back into my listening. I think you're getting at this elitism that I see in this kind of youth culture, in that why should I bike? Why should I do this? Why should my hands get dirty? I can just pay my way into getting this and that. I can skate on the things in the indoor pseudo rink why would I do this? And I do see that
great
more
point all the time.
Dude,
right? Yeah.
Why do I put my weights away? Someone else do it.
Why is daddy's money going to buy you to doing that when you can just get your own self here? Why you can just do this on your own? Why aren't you just putting in the work? Why are you asking someone else to? That wasn't really an option, like coming from a working class, middle class family. That's not an option.
No, you do the work, man.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because I've had parents, one in particular, he came in and started telling me how good his son was, baseball player, and blah blah blah. And all of a sudden he's like, well, would you train him? I'm like, well, yeah, but he'd have to do some things first. I need to coach him, at least have an intro session. And he's like, oh yeah, well, we talked to a local gym here and he said he'd train him for free. And I go, well, I know the owner, and I think you're full of shit. And he looks at me and he genuinely expected me to coach his son because he was high caliber for free, just like I would name drop. I've seen that a few times.
Wow.
Which that really turned me off to the fact that people almost don't expect, if your kid is good, you're going to piggyback off their success or something. I've never ran into that, besides in the last 2 years. I've been doing this for 12 years.
Right.
So I don't know if you have or others, but that really, really has surprised me.
Yeah.
And the ones who you technically do sponsor are athletes that you've worked with and you know their work ethic.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily dependent upon because they're going to make it further than anyone else, but it's because what you've seen day in and day out.
Well, right? I have a kid here who he's from Canada. He has all these D1 schools look at him. His family brought him here so that he could play in America for football. Mm-hmm. And he can't afford a membership at my gym. So I don't make him pay, and he cleans up bathrooms every time he's in. He takes those 10 minutes. It ain't about the money sometimes. You're giving that kid a leg up who deserves it because he's a hard worker. Hell yeah, all day.
Absolutely. And I don't see that as much anymore in kids. I completely forgot a story that I was going to add to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It'll come back.
I was agreeing with you so much, and I just lost my own train of thought.
That collarbone injury.
It drives me nuts. These kids that I see these days, don't come in and say, put in the work. Just put in the work at the end of the day. Oh, my colleague and I, we talk about this a lot with this high school that I work at, because he comes from a very, very working class family, has a ton of student debt, but he was a student athlete in college, but he was like, this is something I value, this is something I want to do, I will work he worked every single day, he had a full-time job while being a student athlete, while getting a 3.8 GPA in engineering.
Damn.
This kid worked his butt off, and he's like, I would 100% take an athlete who's maybe not the best caliber athlete, but comes in and grinds every single day
100%.
versus an athlete that comes in all fruity-tooty, runs is really fast, really good, but just doesn't really care at the end of the day. You can't coach the athlete that doesn't care. I'm blessed to have a athlete here who she's two-time junior Olympian and Pan Am champion. But she has one of the best work ethics ever. And she's also straight up to there's days I can tell she's tired. I'm like, how are you feeling? She's like, man, I'm really tired. But she won't bitch. She won't cry. She'll just do the work. And I'm like, well, hey, let's back off today. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where kudos to her. I was telling you earlier, we were talking about her.
Yeah.
She literally quit everything because she was so burnt out. And that happened at the age of 15 when she's world caliber.
Yeah.
And, it took her saying no to everyone else because she was overuse injuries.
Right.
She was burnt out from overuse of doing her sport. And she just spent 6 months here and we just lifted. Yeah. That's it. And she did some stuff. I explained to her why she was doing it. She didn't like doing it. But then I told her why. She's like, oh. I'm like, it's going to help with this injury, past injury imbalance, whatever she do. She's like, oh, I feel better. It took time, but she understood. And now she's back at the sport. She's loving it again. But she also told everyone else, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
And not burn out. So like, and that's a girl who's 16. I'm like, you got your shit figured out at a young age. That's awesome.
Right?
So
Yeah.
like, I've never seen that before in my life, by the way.
Right.
But it's her parents. Her parents are good. They listen. But I've been doing this a long time. That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Yeah, I think that's something we were talking about earlier is another thing to add on at the youth level, adding just like a knowledge of why you're doing what you're doing, as opposed to paying for these really expensive camps, coming in for a week, doing all these things, not knowing exactly why you're doing it, and then going out and repeating these things without actually knowing the purpose of why you're doing it, kind of building that knowledge.
Yeah, not only that, like if you don't know the why, and then the coach trying to teach you something fancy or whatever it is, or if it is something simple, if you don't know the intent and you're just going through the motions to get it done, that's a whole nother.
Sure.
That's a whole nother conversation. Like you could, let's say it was something simple, but I'm like, you have someone who has let's say their left lat is weak and they have to do all this crazy shit. I'm like, why don't we just do some like use a band and pull or do some lat pull downs. Like you have an overuse, like you see that in basketball players.
Right.
Sometimes their shoulders are dropped, one trap will be bigger than the other because they're always, right hand throwing a basketball, and then they have shoulder pain on that side. I'm like, well, we got to bring that fucker down.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be complicated, but it's the same thing. They're like, well, now they don't know the reasons why, but once you empower them, I think that's huge because an athlete then feels like they can help themselves too.
Right. And they buy into the program then.
Well, yeah, exactly. Then they're going to understand where you're coming from rather than like, well, if I do a lat pull down, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. Or if they're doing a band and it's something really simple, they're like, isn't there like some special trick? No, not really.
No.
Yeah, and I think the important part, both you hit on this, was anybody, any coach, anybody can just sit there and tell you to do this or do that, or they sit down and watch it. But I think the reason both of you become very good role models and valuable teachers to these kids in their lives because they're so influential at that age. And the fact that I'll see Anna show up at the high school, the gym she teaches at, coaches at, and she will run outside for at least 2 hours minimum, then come inside, lift weights for another 2 hours, then probably go do her studying and reading, and come back a few hours later, and then hit the bike for some high intense sessions. And that is valuable work ethic for 6 to 8 hours of nonstop working out with studying nonstop on top of that. And then for you, for anybody that comes in, Ryder, for extra work, anytime before 4:30, you're either diving your head into continually learning. We're gonna let this hot rod pass by here, or you're working your butt off, sweating your brains out to get a good flex picture for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it was epic.
When you lead by example, I think it really helps you set apart your influence to these kids and who you talked about being honest with herself. She probably trusts you enough that she can be honest instead of faking it, because she knows you're real too.
No, you're right, because we actually talked about it about a year ago. All of a sudden, I mean, it was 6 months before she quit, so maybe a year and a half ago. And I'm like, are you all right? I could call it. And I said, you're burning out, aren't you? She's like, yeah. And then she quit, and she told me that she had quit, and then she's like, all of a sudden, I think she just needed time away from everyone. She just messaged me one day. She's like, I'm coming back. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
And that's all it takes. Like, you just got to be an open book with people, too.
And that's why I see these kids work with Anna on the track, but I'm like, if they realize not only the athlete they have in front of them, but the instruction of the person that's there willing, effort-wise, to give that to them, if they take full advantage of that, they'll be in amazing places down the road. But if they just show up, ate nachos that morning, just feeling like whatever, just going through the motions, they're getting nothing out of it.
Oh, yeah.
What you were saying earlier about the what do you call the incline running treadmills, right? What was that place called?
Oh, acceleration.
Yeah. So they get, someone will put kids on those, and again, they'll run it once every 5 minutes and try to beat their last time or previous time or this or that, where I just feel like, again, you're trying to attain something that's not real.
Well, it's not transferable.
Yes.
I mean, unless there's a sport of running on treadmills.
Yes.
I have issues with not the company itself. I have issues with that training mechanism. Okay. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's no transfer training.
No.
At the end of the day, you can do that on a track.
Yeah.
You can get on a fence. You can practice technique. If you improve your technique and you work in the weight room, you are going to become a better runner. At the end of the day, to be better at running, you need to practice running.
Yeah.
Why do you need to do this on a treadmill? Why do you need to pay $300 to practice running?
Well, those treadmills are expensive.
For a coach to stand there and write your time down,
right,
and then tell you
put their hand on your back.
Well, that's another thing too. Like, I'm all about keeping numbers and stats, but at the same time, sometimes people then just dwell on those.
Yep.
And they also want to beat it, and all of a sudden it becomes a thing where they don't train for the day, they train to beat their last PR.
Well,
Right.
great. Yes, great point. So let's transfer this real quick into the elitism, and then your athlete being honest with herself. And I talked about this a little bit before, but nowadays with social media, are people training to train for themselves, or are they trained to put a post up on Instagram?
That's
The
something
latter.
I think. Yeah, that's something I ask people.
Honestly,
Like, if I do as an assessment, one of the first questions is why. I'm like, why
Yeah.
do you train? And if you can't answer that, then I don't know if we should do this.
Yeah.
If it's just if it's just genuinely like because I got some demons and I get out and working out, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Or if it's I want to look good naked, or if I want to, I don't know, look better to find a significant other, we'll just be honest. Let's do
Right.
it. And I don't think people are honest with themselves about that at all.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like for me, I did a post a while back. It was a year ago.
The
I said,
shirtless one?
no, it was but it was something. I think I said, why do you train? And I think I said something like anger. That's all I said.
Yeah.
And I had like fucking 10 people message me that because I am message me like that's why I do. And I'm like, you just gotta be honest.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have that release, no matter what it is, it could be just coming in, hanging out with the boys. But I think a lot of times people do sports. Why do you do sports? I miss competing. I hated practice, but the thing I miss most is hanging out with the guys, honestly, and having that camaraderie, especially on the field. I think that's what everyone wants. So if you can find that in training or some other aspect, I think people they're not honest with themselves when it comes to that. So
I agree with that. Yeah, because I'm always on the track, I'm always in the weight room, I'm always on the bike. The question I always get asked is, what are you training for? Why are you here? Why do you run so much? How do you run so much? And my question always, what are you training for? Are you training for a marathon? Oh, I just get marathon. I don't think I really look like a marathon runner. I'm 5'5" and 120.
well, I'll say marathon runners usually. I'm sorry, this is gonna really piss people off, but you go to a marathon, it's not a lot of good things to look at.
Well, you have muscle.
Well, yeah, because they don't run
Exactly.
to get to that
Yes.
level. You can't really be that muscular.
No, and
Yeah,
it's always befuddling to me. Like, people think I'm training for a marathon, but they always ask, what are you training for? And I say, I'm training for life. And they always are
I
like,
like that.
Dude,
Oh,
yeah, because we're weak
yeah.
as fuck.
Yeah.
Because we got everything at our disposal, man. We aren't chopping wood. We ain't hunting. We gotta get hard somehow. You know that comes back to. I mean, we're already hard because we live in the north. You soft ass Californians, but yeah, or DC. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But
It's still there.
oh, it's there. But I like that. That's true.
Yeah.
Like that's something Nick will say. He has a great little stint on that. I wish he was here, but. Yeah, I 100% agree.
right, absolutely.
Like,
And
harder to kill, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people get so, like, they're like taken aback a little bit. Like, oh, yeah, you're right. I should be out here just for, we've talked about this too, Tony. Like, why, as you progress, as you get older, like, what are you training for? Your training purposes change. When you're younger, obviously, it's to compete, it's to win, it's to get stronger. But as you get older, you can't really, you're not winning on the field anymore. You're not playing. So what are you really training for? And I like what you said about being honest. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think when you figure out what you're here for, then you invest more in what you're actually doing.
Hell yeah. Well, then you have a purpose. Then you have something to drive for.
And athletes, we always need a purpose. We always need to know what we're training for. And so it just shifts. You just need to still have that purpose.
Exactly. That's something I tell people. They're like, well, I'm not an athlete. I'm like, yeah, but if you're training for a purpose, just because it's not a competition, that to me is still a sense of an athlete.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the mindset within the purpose we're talking about. You don't need to like for me, I don't need to bench a certain amount my whole life. At some point, I need to lean out here and not waddle around everywhere.
You're
right?
lean? What are you talking about?
No, but overall, we were talking about someone we know and how she was able to transform this person into, you know what? Why not be able to rep 315 for 15 times rather than bench 405 3 times, right?
It was Dalen. You can say it was my
What
boyfriend.
does it really
It was my boyfriend. It's okay.
What does it get you at the end of the day when you're at that age to be able to go, just overall health and for life? It's going to go a lot further.
But what if you can do both? That's it. Challenge.
That would be epic. That would be epic. And then back to the social media Instagram thing, I think a lot of people, and probably even ourselves once in a while, go to the aspect of we're only posting our successes. And you see some people like Joel Dirks is great. He'll post on us every single day, whether he fails, whether he's having a tough day, or anyone really. But I think if they're kind of in the fitness area and they're trying to be a leader in this area, I think it's important to show the good days and the bad days.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, especially, people think like people go to max effort every day, or like CrossFitters do 18 workouts a day, and it's like, have you ever been around a competitive athlete at that high caliber? If you haven't, then don't assume.
Right, exactly.
Because that is not the case.
No.
Some of the stuff they post, if they're doing that kind of stuff, it's like they're 10%, if that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like one of my closest friends back in DC, she's actually an Instagram fitness model, and every day she posts, obviously, because that's how she makes money, is by posting, and she's sponsored by products. But she always posts, like, she always looks so fucking good. And like when I see her in person, I'm like you're a very attractive woman, but like you don't look like Instagram good. Like, why don't you show, like, I feel like you would appeal to so many more people if you just showed like what you actually look like instead of always looking like a fucking Athena every single day.
She's single?
No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I thought I'd swoop in. Sorry. She like big bearded men? Damn it.
I like how you're making her angry now.
Yeah, I know. It's like, no. Oh, about Instagram models? Oh, yeah.
Just the cursing coming out, I like.
Oh, that'll do that for me.
Yeah, and I just like, it just behooves me how she, like, who are you trying to appeal to? Like, not only she's a fitness model, she really got into fitness, but like, who are you trying to appeal now? Are you really, you tell me that you're trying to teach people how to be healthy, that you're trying to improve people's lives, but when you're just sitting there in a bikini looking a fucking amazing, like, Barbie, that's not, I'm never gonna look like that at the end of the day. So like, who are you trying to really appeal to at the end of the day?
Well, probably sponsors.
Yeah. Exactly. That's who she is.
Well, not only that, you see that sometimes where, don't get me wrong, you see some like girls and guys who are both like very attractive, they're cut, blah blah blah, but then they're like, do my program. That drives me.
That's what she does.
Goddamn wall.
It's all money, right? They're trying.
No, it is. I get that, but then you have someone who's probably more educated. It's gonna be, and programming is a whole nother thing to even talk about, but like.
Well, then you're right, because you get the ones you then try to get really schematic about it. Only 5 spots left. Sign up for the 31st.
Don't get me wrong. There's
left to sign
that's
up.
all there is. I have enough room for those 5.
But there's coaches out there who do that and who are genuine and actually really good at it, and they should make money.
But because the shitty ones, it's hard to tell which.
For sure.
Which
like, what was it? Florida. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. Florida was trying to do regulation on personal, like coaches and personal training. It got killed right away.
I say that'd be hard to regulate it.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be though. Like, come on, like, just in the sense of, all right, I always use this analogy, like, hey, I got my ace. Okay. What? How long have you coached? Well, no. Can you hire me? Well, no, not really. Like if we want to talk about, I love food. You're like a McDonald's burger maker. I want a fucking chef. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think there needs to be, and don't get me wrong, everyone has to start somewhere. I understand that, but it's just one of those things. You go to Lifetime and some of these bigger global gyms. They have such these huge turnarounds. So then, they have so much money to back them, and you see these coaches. Well, they're trainers. They're not coaches. They're trainers, and they do things so wrong.
Yes.
And people think that's what they need to do.
Dale and I were just having a conversation about this. I don't think anyone in Maryland's going to listen. So at the University of Maryland,
what are you talking about here?
At a university that will remain unnamed.
Yeah.
So they hire personal trainers. Obviously, they hire students to be personal trainers, and you need to get your CSCS. Actually, I don't even think it's CSCS. You got to get your CPT to be a trainer there, and then they hire you immediately. I'm literally speechless at some of the things that I see them do, but they're like, well, I have such success. You're working with an older adult who has never worked out in their life. You ask them to walk a mile, you're going to see success.
Yeah, for sure. They do. You just get them moving. You're winning.
When you talk about GPP, you talk about body check. You just literally if you do anything general and they've never done physical activity in their life, like, a fucking monkey could tell them what to do and they're going to see improvement. Now,
exactly. Now, if you can tell me the why or if there's an issue and you can fix it, okay,
right.
Now let's talk. Not many coaches can do that.
Exactly. And so I saw a trainer a couple months ago when I was still at school who their client came in and she's like, hey, like my shoulder's kind of hurting. Like I don't really think I can bench press today. And they're like, oh. And as a good trainer or a coach would do like, oh, well, here's an alternate exercise that's like where you're hurting. Like let's switch it up. The trainer said, oh, well, we'll just skip it today. I can't think of something else to do.
Seriously?
Yes. They literally just skipped it. And I was like, how do you wear that personal trainer shirt and not be able to come up with a simple substitute for a bench press? Like,
oh my God.
This is day one.
Well, and that gives credence to, I think, when you kind of first opened in the Woodbury area and started making a name for yourself here at what this gym was formerly called in the CrossFit aspect, with all these pop-up garage gyms trying to claim themselves as CrossFit affiliates, right?
Yeah.
And when they started cracking down on that, it was good because it gave your business and other valid businesses more credibility versus just someone's garage with 2 people trying to claim that they're an affiliate.
Yeah. Well, not only that, like, I could talk all day about CrossFit. People know how much I am, in a way, for it and against it. I'm just, so many people do it wrong. I call it mom and pop shops. Like, I love food. Doesn't mean I should open up a restaurant. No. Fuck no. I wouldn't know the first thing. But I know how to eat it. But that's the thing. Like, you just see, I'm kind of an elitist when it comes to coaching, and it's definitely a fault of mine. Like, because I just expect more out of people and coaches if you're going to be doing so, because I don't like mediocrity when it comes to coaching.
But I don't think it's a bad thing, because coaches have such a responsibility for lives of athletes.
Yes.
Like, at the end of the day, especially if you're working with younger athletes, the injuries that they sustain at that younger age will carry through to when they're older, and the habits they learn and build at that younger age, at that impressionable age, like we've talked about, will carry through. And so I don't think that it's a bad thing to hold coaches because they're role models, because they have such a control over the literal bodies and lives of the athletes that they work with. I don't think it's a bad thing to hold coaches to a higher standard.
And that's where, and we should, but we don't.
Right.
And I don't know how to change it, what to do. I'm not the one for the answer for that. But like, again, when you come back to someone like myself or you, who've been doing this for how long, have the education and the experience, and again, I say you have to start somewhere. But all of a sudden, you get someone fresh out of school even, and they still don't know how to coach a squat. Okay, we just need to work with you. But what about these people who all of a sudden, like, I found fitness and I've been doing it for a year, now I want to become a coach? I have people come to me all the time and ask that, and some of them, like, they come from a very sincere, passionate place and they want to help people, so that's awesome. But I'm like, you have a long ways to go. Like, it's just one of those things where you see people all of a sudden, again, just take some weekend certification and they think they know their shit. And I'm like, if it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Right.
But it's not, and I don't know. There has to be better regulation on it. I believe that. And I think one of the arguments, too, when that tried to be passed in Florida was like, well, there won't be enough trainers for all the obese people. And I'm like, no, but it'll be the right ones.
Yeah.
It'll be the right people. So now you don't have gyms who are struggling, right?
Absolutely.
Like, there's so many gyms out there that are struggling. Like, I'm lucky enough that I'm doing very well, but there's other gyms out there that I know coaches who are fantastic, but they just don't have that thing. Or maybe it's the area, or all of a sudden there's so many competitors in the area, and then they have to go out of business because no one will listen because there's lifetime down the road, right?
Exactly.
So that's my problem with it. And I think if we're gonna do it that way, like, we need to do a better job as a whole, like, for sure.
To back you up with literature also, and justify with what you're saying. So the fitness industry saw a huge boom. The commercialization of the fitness industry saw a huge boom, especially in the 1980s and the 1990s with the aerobics movement. And so we saw this push in the fitness industry, starting commercializing, starting to build these giant chains, the Lifetime Fitnesses, the Planet Fitness.
Even the videos,
LA Fitness.
The aerobic videos everyone was doing.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, Jane Fonda.
Right, exactly. And so you got these, you had the President's Council for Physical Activity Standards as well. And so physical activity became such a big part of American and global culture as well, but people wanted to make money off of that because they found the benefits to it, and people would rather it becomes a quick way to make money. At the end of the day, you don't have to necessarily be certified to do it, but you can make money off of it. And so you start to see these in this capitalist society kind of, and the more free market that we're in, you start seeing this push towards larger chains dominating the fitness industry and people wanting to make a pretty penny and getting those weekend certifications. They're very, very shiny, and they're really, like, you can add letters after your name, and that is a really valuable thing in our society. But that doesn't necessarily, like you've been saying, equate to experience, equate to actually being able to put in the work. And so you can attribute it back to, like, this huge commercialization of the fitness industry back in the 90s. And so, like, the problems you're raising, I think, are really important problems, but, like, they're so hard to fix because they've been around for decades.
For sure. But it just goes back to, like you can't just all of a sudden be like, man, I like money, so I'm gonna manage your money. like, hey, like that's the one I always use, but it's true.
Yeah.
There's all the regulation on that because money's so important, right?
And those are the ones that steal it and
But
run.
what's more important? Yeah. Are our lives and our well-being and our livelihood not more important?
Right. I think it's
money's a fake fucking thing. At the end of the day, it's an object.
Yeah.
Our body, we're not. So this needs to happen. We should really do a podcast on this.
Someone smarter.
But someone smarter needs to do something about this.
Yeah.
But it needs to, otherwise it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's true or not, because, same thing with teachers getting tenured, but I think the longevity aspect really says a lot about the validity of a coach or trainer, right? Someone that's, especially as a personal trainer or coach in aspect, where people are coming to you because they want to versus they have to.
True.
And even like you were talking, Anna, about different trainers, what to do with clients. One of the best ones that I've met with, a friend of mine, he goes to homes of elderly people, and one of the main things they do is purposeful. He has them crawl to the ground and crawl back up all by themselves. When you get old, you're going to fall. That's purposeful right there.
Oh, yeah.
Because they got to be able to survive on their own when nobody's there.
Oh.
Stuff like that. These very crucial things for whatever you want in life. Figuring that out is half the battle, too. So.
And I think a lot of that, bringing it all back home, starts at the youth level. If you learn how your body works, if you learn how you move, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad at a young level, that carries through all through life. And that comes all the way back to having a good coach who's willing to put in the time at the youth level, knows what they're doing, and can teach you how to do that. Then when you get to that older age, you can help others, but you can also make sure that you are okay as well.
Couldn't have been said better, because I know we've all run into people who like all of a sudden want to do fitness or whatever.
Yes.
And then you're like 20 years old and you did like 4 squats and you're retired.
Well,
But you're like,
yes.
I've seen that. I'm like genuinely worried. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, no. There's this. The fact that this is this hard, you fucking need to do it.
Yes.
And that's where we're at, because, like you said, we need to train to live.
Yeah.
That's a quote.
That is great. That's got to go on the wall next.
That's going on the wall.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the next thing I think is knowing what you're capable of, right? Mm-hmm. Anna isn't capable of the same strength you are, and you're not capable of the same.
Okay.
All right.
It's because I'm a male and I have higher testosterone.
Right now, for the next hour, I meant. But I think as a person, and you know, your abilities, your capabilities, everyone's different. But the main thing is within yourself. You're channeling yourself, and through people around you, a leader, coach, personal trainer, is holding you to that, and really getting you there, versus asking for less, versus what you're asking for, versus letting you get away with whatever, or you not holding yourself accountable. And that comes down to a lot of leadership too, whether that's through yourself or through an advisor, coach, whatever, if you're really going to work up to that level or not. What else you got, Anna? You got anything else you want to touch on today that you had in mind, or is it already too long by now?
No, never.
These have been some of my favorite podcasts.
I know.
I love it, all the ones we've done, but this is someone like I never thought some like fit little girl who's really, really smart would be on the same level of hating other things like I do.
Probably more testosterone than both of us tuned out.
Yeah, this would make sense.
Man.
Your power pose is like.
Oh, she was. But yeah. Dude, Fenn couldn't pull that off.
Being in like a male-dominated field of kinesiology, I learned how to take up space, and I just like stand with my feet real wide,
squeezing her quads,
I look super
widening her
angry
back
all the time.
Pretty much do like a mini-me Eddie Hall. Right?
Oh, that's awesome.
I think we hit everything that we talked about before.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me on. This was so much fun, as always.
So, if people want to follow you on Instagram, if you don't want them to, but how can they get in touch? Do you kind of follow what you're doing, where you're going in your own career in life?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Bergy55, B-E-R-G as in giraffe, Y55. You can also follow me on Twitter, Anna.Posbergh. I think my last name, you'll find it on my Instagram. You can also send me an email especially this testosterone stuff. I really enjoy, I don't know if I'm allowed to plug this, but I really enjoy hearing other opinions on my research and kind of learning to grow and how to not only challenge my beliefs, but also perhaps have really valuable conversations and dialogues about it. If you want to shoot me an email, actually, I'd really appreciate that. It's Posb as in boy, E-R-G-H, so Posbergh, my last name, at umd.edu. And I would love to have a conversation. If anyone listening is really into testosterone or anything that we've talked about today, shoot me an email. I'd love to connect.
And will you respond to the trolls on Instagram too?
I love starting with hi, and then I respond to the trolls.
Oh my god. By the way, I showed that to all my friends. I'm just snapping it, and I'm like, guys, you gotta see this.
That was classic.
By the way, I know who I was lifting out of Southside and saw her, and I wanted
awesome.
to just...
Boom.
That was fucking epic.
Hi!
I'm gonna kill her with kindness.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you, Ryder?
My Instagram, Ryder R-E-I-T-E-R 63 Torque SC, or you can just I'm on the Iron Huddle IG all the time. Or
Stop by the gym.
Stop by my gym. Yeah.
You have some grip strength events coming up. It sounds like.
Oh yeah,
too, right?
Anna, thank you.
We need to plug that shit.
Oh, what's so yeah, coming up here? What do you got coming?
We have
for all
King
the
Kong, October 27th. And then, or is it the 26th?
So
it's that weekend.
27th.
What's coming up this weekend?
Oh, this weekend? Yeah. Well, by the time this airs, people won't know. No, we got Julian Pinot and Richard Acevas out with the Strong Fit crew, myself included. We got some other coaches coming out, but we're coaching the seminar and Coaches Week. Should be a lot of fun. We sold out Coaches Week already. We have I think it's like 30, 35 people for the seminar.
That's
It's
awesome.
gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
This is their second time around. And that's definitely something I think most people should look into. It's pretty amazing stuff. And then we have
August 17th, Stan Efferding's coming.
Yep, Stan Efferding's coming out August 17th.
And he's doing a vertical diet seminar and weightlifting or
Yep. Powerlifting
seminar.
after. Yep, so it'll be a full day. That'll be epic.
And then October 26th is the King Kong Grip Challenge.
27th. And then
Okay.
and the Static Monsters is the day before.
Okay.
Or is that flip? The 28th, I think, is Static Monsters. There it is. Yep.
So
yeah,
what events happen at Static Monsters?
So 18-inch axle deadlift max, and then log press.
I think you have some big names coming to that have signed up too. I know.
Yeah, I know. Adam said he's bringing out a bunch of guys. Adam Dirks.
Yep.
I know he's broke world record deadlift. We've trained with him out of his place.
And
I'm pretty interested.
World's Strongest Man competitor. Probably see him on ESPN.
Yep. And I'm sure his wife will do it. Kim, she's one world's strongest man.
World's strongest couple. They're awesome.
Yeah, and so
You had them on the podcast, right?
Yeah, they're
It was
can't
a great
speak.
episode.
Yeah, it was awesome. And
They invited us to their house. We trained. It was the greatest.
Well, I
thing
just
ever.
talked to him. He said something about coming out again, but just summer's crazy. We'll get out there.
Yeah.
But I know he said his best, I think, is like close to 1,100 off of an axle like that, which is unreal.
Unimaginable. I mean, even I remember watching him train, just off topic quick, when he was pulling 225, 315 and getting his bottom step position, the
It
weight
lifted
would
off
be
the
off
floor.
the ground. It was just insane.
Well, he pulled like 495 that day, right? It looked like a fucking clean pull. He would let go of the straps and it would just float. I'm like,
the fastest thing you'll see, yeah.
It does. Videos don't do it
The
justice.
quickness was explosive.
Yeah, he's one of the strongest guys I've ever seen.
So for you, what's coming up with you coming up, Anna? What's new for you?
Yeah, so being a PhD student, I take these things called candidacy exams, and in those at Maryland we do it. It's 4 written exams and 1 oral defense of what you've written. So in each exam, it's 5 hours long. You go into a room, they give you a computer that only Microsoft Word is downloaded on. You are given a question and you answer the question in 5 hours. I do that 4 times with 4 different questions, and then 2 weeks later I defend it, and I get asked questions about why I wrote what I wrote, why I didn't do this, why I didn't do that, and I have to defend it.
That's intense.
Yeah, so if I pass, I become a candidate, I get a 20% pay increase, and I start my dissertation research. If I fail, I get kicked out of my program.
It's pass or fail.
It's pass or fail.
They are cruel.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, you'll pass. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I have those August 14th, August 19th, August 23rd, August 28th, and September 13th. After that, I'm actually going to Monaco next March. I just finalized that trip to collect some data for the IOC World Conference. So I'll be in Monaco for a week, and then I'm also going to Switzerland for more data collection in May. I have a fellowship next fall, so I'll write my dissertation up, and then I will defend it in spring of 2021.
Well, we are very happy we got you. It's over.
We got to keep listening.
Yeah.
keep hearing about this stuff.
No, next
It's
time
unreal.
I'm here.
Yeah.
For
Hell
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
This
Hell
is
yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank
That was
you,
great.
guys.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
That was
much.
good. That went really well. Thank you.
That was